was going to say, and then I'll let you answer it. White people, there are white people who are not as powerful as the system of white people, the caste system that's been put in place, but they still, no matter where they are on the rung or the ladder of success, they still have their whiteness.
Oh, they still have their whiteness. That's billionaire black celebrity Oprah letting people know in Eastern Kentucky, the poorest per capita counties in the United States, letting people know who are living in a impoverished trailer park somewhere without a mom or without a dad and just trying to get by. At least they've got their whiteness. Yeah, that's right. Deal with it. Wow. This is pervasive, though. Now let's talk about this, shall we? Let's have a discussion about what this really does. This mentality, what it does to our society. First of all, if we have, she called it a caste system. If we have a racial caste system in this country, I'm going to need to know, why is it that caste system has also elevated? The system must have done it, right? Because it's the system. It's not individual decisions played out collectively among millions and millions of people. It's the system. Why has the system of white privilege elevated Asian Americans to have a higher per capita income than white Americans do? Why is it the Asian community? Why is it, in fact, numerous non-white immigrant communities have more substantial wealth, higher levels of education achievement, and higher quality of life than white people in this country? I would like the libs to try and answer this for me. I would like them to explain this. I would also like to know where is the overt discrimination in the law against, say, the Latino community. They will often talk of the black and brown community. This is in liberal parlance. And they act like somebody who is from, let's say, rural Honduras is in a very similar situation to, say, somebody who comes from, I don't know, Puerto Rico or Brazil. And you'd say, these are people with very different cultural and economic backgrounds. Puerto Ricans are Americans. They're U.S. passport holders, but somehow they're grouped together with impoverished Hondurans in the liberal conception. Their categorizations are wrong and sloppy. Whiteness, for example. Okay, let's talk about this concept of whiteness for a minute. Someone who is, let's say, sixth generation American, born here, who is white, has the same setup and the same situation, the same privilege, you could call it, as a recent Albanian immigrant who came here not speaking any English, without a penny in his pocket, from a very different culture. White. Albanians are white. Same? Is that the same? I just want to, since we're talking about that's the same. What exactly are the outer limits of white privilege, or where does it know? And what does white privilege get you? I think a lot of people sit around in the country right now and say, what has my white privilege got me? I'm going to hear more stories about how some people are, anecdotal stories about some people feel like they're followed when they're in a store. I've been followed when I'm in a store. I was told very rudely once to pump somebody's gas because I had a hat pulled down over my head, and he assumed that I was an employee. I guess I could have gone on for months and months afterwards, upset. Why would somebody think that I was an employee there? But stuff like that just sort of happens. But people can either hold on to it, or they can say that stuff happens. Human beings are imperfect, and there's not some system that is out to get me. In fact, we have a system that makes distinctions by race in favor of Black, Latino, and Native American people in America. That is a fact. That is legal reality. It's true with affirmative action. It's true in hiring. It's true in corporate America. And yet, we're still always told that the system holds people down. We will have LeBron James. We'll have Oprah Winfrey. We'll have people who are fabulously wealthy, influential, leading lives that 99.9999% of people could never even dream of. And there will be complaints about how hard the system is. Wow. Okay. my friends, this is very divisive. It's very destructive. The sloppy categorizations, the claims that are made that some people have it easy. I mean, what is that supposed to say? Does white privilege mean that a white person is not really capable of earning what he or she has? That it has been given to him? There are more poor white people in America than there are anybody else. So what did their white privilege get them? And I know this is where they would say, "Oh, it's white fragility." See, you're rejecting this concept. No. Judging people by skin color, treating them differently, thinking that they are different because of skin color is racist. It is immoral. It is wrong. That is true irrespective of whether the distinction is supposed to help some that you think are historically oppressed and hurt others that you think are historically advantaged. It's wrong. It's immoral. It rests on moral fallacies and a lack of a real willingness to have a conversation about what's true and what's not in America today. We have a system that we're told that elevates white people, and yet we ask, in what way are white people elevated through the system? And you get a lot of talk about statistics and everything else. Well, I can tell you this. Looking at numbers in the aggregate and making determinations that there is a system that created that is not what we do with a lot of other things. Murder is overwhelmingly a male institution. Guys kill people. Women very, very rarely. You look at violent crime, women very, very rarely kill people. Do we have a system that unfairly targets men? Do we have I always forget the word. Misogyny is hatred of women. Misandry, right? Misandry, hatred of men. Do we have I don't even know how you say this, a misandriotic system or something? Do we have a system that hates men? That's unfairly targeting men for the violent crimes they commit? Or do we have men who just commit more violent crimes than women do? And maybe there's a lot of complicated sociological and, historical reasons you could talk about this, but is it the system? Are we manufacturing that men create or that men cause more violent crime than women do? I don't think anybody yet makes that argument, although I don't know. Give it time. Give it time. There has been a transition, friends, and there is a fascinating piece by Zach Goldberg in Tablet Magazine, how the media led the great racial awakening. And what he does is he just goes and looks at the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, and then the Wall Street Journal almost as a control group in all of this, to see that starting right around 2011, right around the second Obama term, you had an enormous surge in the usage of terms like racism in the media. All of a sudden, you're hearing a lot more about, and it's clear. You go from an increase of 700%, so 7 times as often in the media, the New York Times, the Washington Post used the words racism. 1,000% more in some cases, depending on the terms you're looking at. I mean, you're looking at 7 to 10x increase in the usage of terms meant to describe racism in America. And then you start seeing, and I've talked to you about this before this article came out, and a huge spike in usage of the term white supremacy. White supremacy was known in America until 10 years ago. And that's about how long it takes for the wokeness, for the left to manufacture and spread a narrative that really seeps into the consciousness and becomes powerful. White supremacy was known 10 years ago as something that would be, a person with Nazi, a swastika tattoo on their forehead and says that white people are better than other people and horrible racist garbage. That was what white supremacy was. They wore boots and shaved heads, and they would march sometimes with Nazi swastika stuff and Nazi flags, swastikas, all the rest. That's what white supremacy was. And we all knew that. There was that movie, American History X, about white supremacists, that we'd see them. Now white supremacy is Not enough diversity on a corporate board. That's considered, that is used, they use the term white supremacy for that. So they've expanded, and that's intentional. You see an enormous spike starting 10 years ago in media usage of the term white supremacy. And big surprise, folks, guess what? Around the same time, you start to have a large increase among white liberals, particularly, in their perception of how racist America is. The journals of, the biggest opinion makers in liberal media convinced, and there was a clear campaign to do it. The data speaks for itself. All of a sudden, you're seeing all these terms appear that hadn't appeared before. Came from academia, it came from the college campuses. It had started there. It's really a reboot of critical race. Herbert Marcuse, some say the father of critical race theory, and this happened, and you can see the perception, the trend changing as a result of it. And the way that the media covers race and racial issues all of a sudden shifts dramatically. This was intentional. And I really recommend this piece about the Great Racial Awakening because you see that this was manufactured, and it was based on nothing other than the propagandistic desire of the media. They wanted to convince people that there was more racism, so that's what they did. Because racism gets clicks, and racism is a narrative that makes the white liberals who are pushing it constantly feel better about themselves. And anybody who sees what's really going on in these protests across the country understands that you have crazy white liberals who are they're the dominant force in the protests. In the BLM protests, it's crazy white liberals. They're the ones who are screaming at cops. This piece also has the New York Times latent association between racism and white just takes off like a rocket ship in 2011. It all started right around 2011, 2012. Obama's second term, you have an enormous increase in uses of terms like racial hierarchy, white privilege, whiteness, white supremacy. It all just, it couldn't be any more clear when you plot it and look at it on a graph. This was intentional. The country didn't change all of a sudden, didn't get much more racist. If anything, while we had our first black president who was universally celebrated in the media, pretty much. I mean, there are a few people who are critics on the right, but I mean, 95% of journalists loved Obama. And he's ultra influential, wealthy guy, the most powerful political brand in the Democrat Party to this day. And yet there was supposed to be some huge surge of racism in his second term that the media is reflecting. You look for what was the trigger, what was the incident that led to this. And yeah, all of a sudden you're hearing a lot about white supremacy. You're hearing a lot about these things, reading a lot about these things in the media. And there's a direct correlation between the perception and the usage of these terms. Also, another interesting note that I think should get a lot more attention, and it's that when they look into the data, this is on the conversation.com, when they look into the data on diversity training often backfires. It is worse to have diversity training if you really believe in diversity than to have no diversity training at all, because some people just reject it entirely and become even more annoyed by this. They reject these theories of white fragility and all the rest of it. But even people who don't reject it, here's what it says. Disappointing results and unintended consequences. This is from theconversation.com. And this is about diversity training. In terms of reducing bias and promoting equal opportunity, diversity training has failed spectacularly, according to the expert assessment of sociologists Frank Dobbin and Alexandra Kalev. When Dobbin and Kalev evaluated the impact of diversity training at more than 800 companies over 3 decades, they found that the positive effects are short-lived and that compulsory training generates resistance and resentment. A company is better off doing nothing than mandatory diversity training, Caleb said. Some of the most popular training approaches are of dubious value. There is evidence, for example, that introducing people to the most commonly used readings about white privilege can reduce sympathy for poor whites. Oh, you mean like Oprah saying even poor white people have their white privilege? Especially among social liberals. Piece goes on. There's also evidence that emphasizing cultural differences across racial groups can lead to an increased belief in fundamental biological differences among races. This means that well-intentioned efforts to celebrate diversity may, in fact, reinforce racial stereotyping. End quote. So you see, this is where even the well-intentioned libs with all the diversity training are like, oh, this group of people, we're going to be so good. We're going to give them more. We're going to expect less from them, and we're going to hire them. We're going to bring them in because the libs think, this is what the sociological research shows, they need the help. Without it, they couldn't get the job. That sounds pretty racist to me, folks. And since we're talking about attitudes and race, and there's such a conversation going on right now about policing in this country, I thought it would be worth you hearing this because you won't see it in the mainstream media. According to Gallup polling, the narrative you hear in the mainstream media is that defund cops is what the black community wants, meaning the average black American is on board with this. That's what you get from the frauds at CNN, the lunatics on the left in the left-wing media. But most black Americans, according to Gallup, probably the most respected polling agency that there is, 61% of black Americans want the police presence in America to remain the same. 67% of all U.S. adults want the police presence to remain the same, means not defund cops. 71% of white Americans want the police presence to remain the same. Black Americans want 20% of black Americans would like the police to spend more time in their area. 19% would like them to spend less time in their area. So 1 in 5 black Americans want less police presence. 80% want either more or the same. Do you ever get that sense from the media? No, because they're really still overwhelmingly controlled by and comprised of white libs who don't care about the black community. They care about feeling like they care about the black community.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call time, everybody. Producer Mark, I started watching this new Netflix, Mafia, New York versus the Mafia show. Have you seen it yet?
I have not. That sounds interesting, though.
Pretty good, actually. I kind of turned it on as when you throw something on and you're cleaning up and you're like, I don't really want to watch this, but I want to kind of half watch it. I was a half watcher, and then I was like, no, this is actually pretty interesting.
Is it really scripted or is it like a documentary?
No, it's like a documentary of the early 80s New York bringing down the mob. Giuliani makes appearances in it. That's really how he built his career. Giuliani was known as the U.S. attorney who destroyed the mob.
Yeah, and he cleaned up New York City as the mayor. Everyone knows that.
Well, of course, but I'm saying, to become the mayor first as U.S. attorney, he took down the mob. And then he became, the mayor of New York. But it's incredible. The mob had so much influence and power. The control of the ports, control of meat packing, control of the fish market. I mean, and they could threaten these businesses to give them the payoff. They would just shut the whole thing down. All the workers wouldn't show up.
You think they still don't?
In some businesses, I think there's still some control. I got to say, I don't really know what the status of the mob is right now. I know more about some of the Russian mob stuff because I worked with some anti-Russian mob NYPD guys, and they say the Russian mob is ruthless in Russia. In the U.S., they say it's more they're just whatever they can do to make money. If they can do like Medicare fraud, they love that. Like if they can just steal from the government, that's their favorite thing to do. But they're also willing to just engage in shocking violence, particularly in the home country, and the Russian mob also involves all the former Stan countries. So, you know, there are Russian mobsters in Uzbekistan. We'll call them Russian mafia, even though they're not Russian, in Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Armenia. The Armenians will often get grouped in as being Russian mob. So, yeah, interesting stuff. And I think they call it the Brotherhood, and they have all these like different names for this stuff. But Producer Mark, I think you would like this Netflix show. I'm just telling you.
Yeah,
it's well done.
I might watch it.
Yeah, they go into the Bonanno crime family, the Gambino, Genovese, you know, a bunch of other ones. So I'm trying to see if I can name Bonanno, Genovese, Gambino, Colombo. Did I get to 5? I'm trying to see if I can do all 5 off the top of my head. I'm missing one, I think. Right?
Yeah, you are. I can't think of it.
I know. I feel like Gambino became the most famous because of John Gotti. So, anyway. Oh, producer Nick's weighing. Lucchese. Yes. That's the one. I feel like they didn't have the best PR. I feel like of the crime families, they're the least known, you know? The Bonannos were scary.
Have PR people.
What's up?
I don't think crime families have PR people.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like they're the least. There's the least lore about the Lucchese out there. You get obviously Gambino, super big. Bonanno, super well known. Genovese, I know stuff about some of their captains. Anyway, the mobs. Anyway, it's a good mob show. I'm looking for good shows these days because you know New York is still frozen in place. You can't really do anything here. So I reckon Bosch and this Netflix show are my late night. They're my late night joy right now.
I'm all into Big Brother's Back. I don't know. Have you ever watched Big Brother?
No, what's that?
It's the show on CBS. It's been around for 20 years now, where they lock 15 people into a house for 3 months.
I can tell you, a long time ago, I went on a date with a woman who I think won one of the Big Brothers.
Really?
Yes.
Oh. I'm a fanboy of that
really?
show.
We got to talk about it.
Yeah.
A long time ago.
I've watched every season.
And I can't even remember her name, but I do remember it came up on a date, and I was like, what is this show? And she explained it to me, and I was like, that sounds crazy.
How have you never heard of it before? It's like the biggest reality show almost ever.
I've heard of it. I've never watched it.
Okay.
I've no idea what it...
It's mindless and interesting.
Huh. Yeah. Speaking of which, I gotta get the PS4 going along. Can you play Fortnite on a computer or only on PlayStation?
You can play on a computer. I would say probably with a regular laptop, it's not going to be as good. Like there are people who have like serious gaming laptops, and it'd probably be much better on the console.
Yeah, I don't have a desktop computer anymore. I haven't in a long time, but maybe it's time to get one. All right, let's get to some roll call here. John, hey Buck, what do we get? Wait. Hey Buck, on mail-in ballots, there's a saying when a person doesn't give their best, they mailed it in. Well, it came from somewhere, right? In person is the only way to keep it fair. Less technology is better and harder to cheat. John, I think you're right. And I think that the people that are pushing for this on the left don't care that you're right because they view this as a way to get their way. So that's what I see happening here. That's my belief. All righty. There's going to be mail-in balloting for a bunch of states. I don't think it's not going to be universal, but there will be some of it. Sarah, hey Buck, greetings from the socialist state of Washington. You ever watch The American President with Michael Douglas and Michael J. Fox? One of my favorite lines seems eerily fitting for today. Michael J. Fox says, "People want leadership, Mr. President, and in the absence of genuine leadership, they'll listen to anyone who steps up to the microphone. They want leadership. They're so thirsty for it, they'll crawl through the desert toward mirage. When they discover there's no water, they'll drink the sand." And the president, Michael Douglas, responds, "Lewis, we've had presidents who were beloved who couldn't find a coherent sentence with 2 hands and a flashlight. People don't drink the sand because they're thirsty. They drink the sand because they don't know the difference." Wow. Are we there today or what? Keep up the good work, you two. Shields high. It's kind of a somewhat cynical view of politics. But yeah, I remember the American president. I think that's the one with Annette Bening, where like the big line is she's like, "You've lost more than my respect, Mr. President. You've lost my vote." You know, she's like an environmentalist activist. I will tell you this. I have gone back and watched some of The West Wing, a show I've maybe had seen 2 episodes of it in total before. And I was kind of curious. It's a fascinating time warp into the mentality of 90s libs. You go back and you watch it, and it's all about like gun control and hate crime legislation and, you know, a woman's right to choose. And it's all these really, oh my gosh, all this sort of sanctimonious crap around that. But so much of it is, if we can just get gun control, we'll save so many lives. You're like, what? Doesn't work. Never has worked. Didn't work then. Doesn't work now. But there's so much smug liberalism in it. But it's a little bit more. It's less insane than it is now. I will say that, because it was so transparently about feel-goodism. And now the libs are less obsessed with their own feel-goodism as they are the feel-goodism of destroying you. So it's changed a little bit. It is.
It's also pre-9/11, so the world completely changed. Wouldn't we love to talk about that stuff again?
Oh, yeah. That's true, too. It is. It was. Wait, was it pre-9/11?
The West Wing? Yeah, wasn't it in the 90s?
I think you're right. I think it was Clinton administration. When did the West Wing start? Do a quick Google on that while I'm going through this. Producer Nick says the West Wing is cheesy 90s Democrat fan fiction. It's absolutely true.
It started pre-9/11, so it started in 99 and ended in 06.
That's right. So it started pre-9/11, but it definitely continued in because it was really the alternative to the Bush presidency for a lot of people for a number of years. But it is so corny, and Aaron Sorkin is it's just so transparent that they're creating this world where like the liberal ideas always win. What a shock. Oh gosh, all the good people are the liberals. And the liberals are all like econ Nobel Prize winners who also know how to throw a baseball and just want to make some delicious chili, you know? Oh God. It's fun to go back and watch it. 'Cause you're like, is this how libs really see themselves? They're a bunch of lunatics. Anyway. What was I saying? Oh yeah, but the American president, I also remember that one because that was where they had the whole Bill Clinton-like thing about how Michael Douglas has to call for an airstrike, and he's like practically crying when he's thinking about how there's going to be some guy who works as a night janitor who's going to get blown up in the night strike or something, and it's all Clinton-esque cleanup stuff. Kyle, Buck, when I was listening to Biden harangue that interviewer talking about taking I got to restart this one. When I was listening to Biden harangue that interviewer about taking a test beforehand to see if they were junkie on coke, I couldn't help but appreciate the irony of his own son being kicked out of the Navy for failing a drug test for cocaine, the same son who made money off his dad's name in Ukraine and China. Good Lord, I really hope Trump is able to capitalize on this in the debates. Kyle, you know, where's Hunter sometimes trends on Twitter, but they're not going to care about that. You know, you're seeing also, and I'll talk more about this tomorrow, the weaponization of prosecutors' offices once again against Trump. As I told you this, I've been telling you this would happen. You've got the Cyrus Vance, the district attorney for New York, bringing an investigation against the Trump organization, criminal investigation for fraud. And you've got the New York State Attorney General calling for the disbanding of the NRA because of mismanagement of funds. Oh, yeah, that's not politically convenient timing, right? Sure. Libs are ruthless, friends. Just accept it now. Know this is what you're up against. Michael writes, Shields High. Yeah, watching that wedding in Beirut, the wedding photos, is a heart stopper. And judging from what I saw, they didn't get their hazmats right, and I can imagine it now. Put that dangerous stuff with the other dangerous stuff, not realize the properties of either. It sure shows very well just how fast one's life can change. Yeah, and how fast one can lose one's life, Michael. Biggest, craziest explosion I've ever seen on video. That wasn't nuclear, historical footage, but I've never seen anything like that before. Almost 3,000 tons, not pounds, 3,000 tons. It would be like loading up 3,000 cars with ammonium nitrate and blowing them all at the same time. right? You fill three cars up with their own weight in ammonium nitrate, but that amount of ammonium nitrate and blowing it all at once, unbelievable. Horrible for the people of Beirut. Hopefully they'll be able to get them the aid and assistance that's needed to prevent this from becoming more of a full-on humanitarian catastrophe than it already is. All right, next up here, Jay. Hey, Producer Mark. Oh, look at this. Jay's just writing to Producer Mark now. I first found the show on 1100 KNZZ in Grand Junction, Colorado, when your show replaced Michael Savage. Oh, well, that's nice. Now I listen to the podcast. Love the show. I think you're just the best. And that assistant of yours, Buck, is is pretty entertaining, too. Just kidding, Buck. You're the best. I heard you start talking about Kindergarten Cop and how it got canceled. I was expecting the reason to be because of the scene when the little boy says, boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. I thought that would have triggered the libs long ago. Keep it up, shields high. Well, that is very gender normative, I guess you'd say. And that's erasing trans lives when that little kid says that in the movie, right? So there's a lot of reason for people to criticize this, I'm sure, now that you bring it up. Probably will get canceled. Probably will get canceled for that, too. Whatever you think is the too extreme for the libs to take it position now, give it time, they'll take it, right? Whatever the slippery slope shows you they're going toward, we're going there. You got to know that about the libs. Robert, hey, Buck, Portland not only has lost control, they've lost their constituents' confidence to lead. Portland and Seattle are losing billions of dollars as the lawlessness continues. Defunding the police will only further the decline as businesses and residents leave for a safer state. Insurance companies will be forced to decline the writing of policies of residential homes and businesses due to lack of security in the area. A total economic collapse will be imminent if this madness continues. That being said, people vote with their common sense as well as their wallets, so voting Democrat is a recipe for bankruptcy for most Americans. Yeah, that's right. There's a spiral, a downward spiral that Democrats put us all on when they do things like defund cops or just even make cops the bad guys. What then happens is we turn around and we see the businesses leaving a community because they don't want to get robbed or ransacked by looters, and businesses don't want to go in. Residences also, residential real estate changes. People don't want to live in high crime areas. And so what you have are the people with capital and jobs leave, and who's left behind? People who are more dependent on the state, people who have less capital, people who are more likely to be stuck. And that's what ends up happening, and it's terrible for everybody, and it's how cities die. And Democrats are right now flirting with policies that can actually destroy cities. All right. Remember, you can send me messages for roll call at facebook.com/BuckSexton or teambuck@iheartmedia.com for the email. BuckSexton.com is getting a facelift as well. We're doing more and more stuff on the site, so please check in there. And Producer Mark, you got to check some voicemails out for tomorrow. 844-900-2825. 844-900-BUCK. Are you excited? Is this what do you and Mrs. Mark sit and, have a burrito or something and listen to the voicemails?
Oh, yes, of course. It's the highlight of my day. I actually forgot it was Thursday, so thank you for ruining my day. Appreciate it.
Yep. There you go, buddy. He loves it, folks. Don't listen to him. He loves it. It's his favorite part of the whole week is when he sits and listens to 100 voicemails. All right, next up here, we'll go to the Instagram. You can also send me messages there. Next up, we have Teal, who writes, great segment on Tucker Carlson last night. Teal, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Jeff writes in, I've got a new book. Oh, Jeff, I got to check that one out offline and see what we're talking about here. Let's see. Next up. Oh, Ivan writes in, there's a point where it stops being on them and it's on us. We are accepting the lawlessness, the lockdowns, the bankruptcies, the school closings, and the double standards, even when we know what these lunatic progressives are doing is insane. They are using whatever power they have. We are just unhappier by the day, miserable and complaining. Ivan, I'm with you, man. You know, when are we going to fight back? When are we going to say enough is enough? And we got to win. You want justice? Win. That's the truth of American politics right now. If you rely on the system and the good faith of the other side, get ready to eat a lot of stuff you don't want to eat, so to speak. That's the show for today, team. Back tomorrow for a Freestyle Friday. Shields high.